Okay, so this is my first look at Worthington Games Hearts and Minds. I'm going to be playing it, obviously. Here's the box for it. Recent pickup for me. I know it's kind of not a terribly new game. Oh, no, it is. 2010. Wow. Okay. I've seen a lot of people playing it. That should cue me in. People don't play the older games much. Alright. What are my first thoughts of it, and what am I seeing here? The rules were kind of difficult to push through. They're not organized terribly well, but I think everything's in there. It's hard to tell. We'll see as I play whether or not I run into some difficulties. Initial components. I see a big problem here. This actually panicked me to begin with. These things are artillery markers. They look like helicopters. Ouch. Since I bought a used game, and I kind of pawed through it, looked like everything was there, so I gave, I may have even counted counters. I gave a good feedback on my purchase. But then I start setting it up, and I'm like, where are the artillery? And I look online, and apparently there are different versions of it because somebody's complaining that their artillery and tanks are too modern looking. Well, my artillery just doesn't exist now. Maybe they're talking about these mortars that the NBA has. Anyway, other than that, the counters are absolutely gorgeous. These beautiful colors, dark, rich colors, thick counter. A lot of excess pieces that you don't need. I got a bag full of blank counters. And these numbers you don't really need. You can keep track of whatever's needed for them on the chart. It gives an option, do you want money-like counters or otherwise. The cards are kind of crappy, however. They're not, terribly flimsy, but they're very, very sharp corners, ouch, and they don't shuffle very nicely. They're not terribly stiff. It may just be I'm afraid of slicing my fingers off. This is a CDG, but like almost every CDG, it has a somewhat different mechanism. Go a little bit into the play of the game and probably cover some of that there. We also have player aid charts, which are very, very flimsy. I'm not terribly upset about that. I mean, normally I have these lying on the table. I don't really need something sturdy, but these are lighter weight than I'm used to. And the board is a thin cardboard, perfectly serviceable, kind of pretty. Certainly much smaller than Victory Games Vietnam. Okay. So, let's look at what we have here. So the basic sequence of play is you're playing a year at a time. And there are scenarios to play smaller than the grand campaign. I'm going to, of course, play the campaign because, it's my first time, and that's the best way to learn a game, right? Okay. So the first thing is a reinforcements phase. Every year, each side gets some reinforcements. I haven't completed this setup. I haven't put any of the NVA units on the board yet. Silly me. And they have a lot of discretion as to where they want them, and I wanted to understand the rules. Well, I understand them now, but I still haven't done it because I haven't really formulated what my plan is for the game, and I'll go into that as I start actually playing, I guess, and you'll see those on there. But the Allied player, who includes the U.S., the ARVN, and some international forces, most specifically the Republic of Korea, has a certain setup, but then they're allowed to redeploy some of their units at the beginning of the game too, so yeah, we'll see that. And we cover not just South Vietnam, but also, and we've got it divided into the 4 core zones as per the ARVN structure. It also includes the ability to expand the war into Cambodia and Laos, but not into North Vietnam, although I believe you can probably bomb North Vietnam. Okay, So you start off with a reinforcement phase where each side gets some predetermined troops, well, and they place them at the beginning of each year. Then you get the hand refill, where you replenish your hand up to 5 cards, one of which of the new cards can be one of these campaigns, which you get to select. And oh boy, are these worded in a way that caused me trouble. Play 3 SRPs instead of 1 for actions. So SRP and RP was kind of a, it wasn't that clear to me from reading the rules, the difference between the two. I thought they were just being sloppy. SRP are stored resource points. RPs are resource points that you get off the card. So like most Ops event games, you get 3 resource points from the card, and normally you can only play 1 of your stored points in that same turn. With a campaign, you're allowed to play more. Campaign also gives bonuses if the zone or core area that you're launching the campaign in, if you control everything in that region. Doing that gives you more hawk or dove points. And this is how the game is won, really. The US player wants to maintain a certain level of support for Vietnam, primarily in the US. The game is won or lost by US political feel. If the United States had gone for an all-out war, they could have won this if it was possible. But basically, it's the US's commitment to fighting this limited war without any sign of victory or anything that caused the US to pull out. And that is the premise of this and most games, I think, in Vietnam. Now, unfortunately, all I have to compare this to that I've played is Victory Games Vietnam, which is sort of a mini monster. And this looks, I mean, it's a tiny board, but it also looks like it's probably playable in an evening or maybe 2. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. I'm hoping to push it out in a week because my time is special. Primarily, I take my time playing the game, but also I've got to get this done by Friday because I'm leaving for vacation on Saturday. And boy, does that bring dread into my head. I'm not going to be home. I'm not going to be in my comfortable surroundings. I'm not going to have these games that I have to cope with. But I am going to be trying to arrange shipment of all my other old games back. Kind of the lower priority ones. I got the high priority ones up here. But enough of that kind of babbling. Let's get back to the game itself. Okay. So anyway, you're able to replenish your hand. You're able to pick one of these campaigns, which are special cards, which if you're poised for them, you can get on every one of your card plays an extra point in your favor, either towards hawk or dove. I.e., if you can get complete control of an area, you can get that bonus. Now, well, it's not complete control. The control is limited. So, for example, for the U.S., it looks like it has to be all provinces, or the Allied player. They have to control that core, and they have one campaign for each core area. And they're each one-time use. So if they manage to get all the red counters out of a core area, and then maintain it that way, they can get a lot more hawk points in their favor. They're winning the war, at least in that area. For the red player, theirs are a little less required. So Zone 3, they only need 5 or more provinces. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, you know, they're going to need to be able to get a significant power in that area. But they don't have to take the entire control, which would probably be impossible because the coastline, I'm guessing, is really, really tough for them to hold. Okay. So then we go to the card play, and this is, you know, the meat of a CDG. Each player alternates playing a card, and they get the ops, which they can use. They can spend their ops in order to trigger an event. And let's take a look at one of these. These are reinforcement cards that come in later in the game. Not reinforcement, but they're cards that come in later in the game. So for example, here I'd get 4 resource points that I can use, which are essentially ops. But I can spend 3 of them to do the action listed. This is a nice kind of mechanism that I haven't seen before. It might be that you have the choice between the ops and event, but it does give you some additional points if you want to do the event, that you can do more than just the event. I think it's a nice little twist on the normal choose one or the other. We'll see how it goes. Okay. And there are a number of different things you can do with your points. It costs 1 point, for example, to grab all the units of an area and move them. And they can move to different areas. They move by their movement allowance, which for the NVA is only 4. For Viet Cong, it's only 1. And for the Allied units, it's 6, with the caveat that the ARVN has to roll a die to move at all. What you do when you decide to define a group of ARVN units that want to move, and you don't have to say what's going with them at this point, is you say, okay, I'm going to move, say, these 2 ARVN units, these 2 spaces. You roll a die, and if you get a 2 or more, you can make that trip, and you can add other units that aren't ARVN to the group to move with them in order to protect them from possible ambushes or whatever. If you roll less, you have the option of stopping at any point along the way up to that die roll. And that can include, I just don't want to go anywhere. Okay. It costs a resource point to fight a battle as the attacker. And that's for each round of the battle. After 1 round of the battle, the defender can spend resource points from their stored track to pull troops in as reinforcements. The U.S. or Allied player has the option to bring certain special reinforcements, air units, naval assets, etc., into play in order to give them a better fighting chance. If they're the attacker, they can bring them in kind of for free at the beginning of the fight. If they're the defender, they have to fight 1 round before they bring them. And the defender can only bring reinforcements if he's still there afterwards. But if I spend points to generate an attack, the defending player can say, I'm going to try to evade. And the way he does that is off this little evasion table. The more units he has, and if he has 4, which is pretty much the stacking limit for regular units, he can't evade with the full stack. He could leave somebody behind to cover the rear guard, though. And then the evasion is a retreat to a safe province, which is primarily one that you control. For the Reds, it's red flagged. For the Blues, I'm not sure if it's bases or whatever. Anyway, and on the way there, you could conceivably be ambushed. Movement is affected by the presence of enemy troops. I believe it's veteran troops add 1 to the movement cost. The bomber can do the same. It's an interesting system, and one that I've not seen anything quite like before. I love the fact that it's not the stupid point-to-point stuff that is really hard for me to visualize compared to a map like this. What would a CDG be without political control markers? Well, some of them work fine without. This one has them. If you're alone in an area with troops, with your own troops, you can spend a resource point to try to convert an area. Now, conversion isn't guaranteed. The VC and the ARVN can do political conversions for automatically. The NVA and the foreigners have to roll a die. And I don't remember what the odds are on that. Yeah, I got the rulebook closed there. Not a big deal. Yeah, look. Is it a 1 to 4 or something like that? if the attempt is successful. The attempt is successful if the roll is equal to or less than the number of friendly units in the province. Gotcha. The example has 4, which is why the 1 to 4 is in my head. Pacification is similar. This is something only the allied player can do. He has to have either U.S. or international forces, not Republic of Korea, not ARVN, present. Then he can roll, and the goal is to get one of these blue chips. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same as regular political control. It's just the ARVN for regular political control can just grab control of an area. The advantage of pacification, first of all, the disadvantage is you have to keep a military unit stacked with it. I can put these here. And if you don't have a military unit, it stops being pacified, which means if the enemy, something can't be both pacified and red controlled, because in order to make something red controlled, you have to have knocked the military out of there. So there's a cost to maintaining pacification, but the advantage to pacification has to do with ARVN stability, or actually just the Republic. And the stability of the government there is based on pacified provinces as compared to dead ARVN units. Dead ARVN units, if ARVN's taking too heavy a loss, and there's no real military control over anything, then the government's more likely to flip to the coup side and move here. Now there's some weirdness about the rules on the coup. I don't understand, but for some reason it says if you have a coup, you leave this marker flipped to the coup side. There doesn't seem to be any effect to that. I would assume that it should do something, like if you're on that side and at 0 points, there's another coup, but there doesn't seem to be any implication of that sort in the rules. I'll keep looking, maybe there is, but right now I don't see it. If it's on the coup side, bad things happen, and that's at the end of the turn. I'll go into that when we get there. I'm kind of taking too much time on this, I think. Battles are taken care of on this chart, and basically you add the number of combat factors you have to a die roll, a 6-sided die, and that's how much damage you do to your opponent. Now, one kind of cool thing on this, like in a house divided or whatever, counters have 2 sides. There is an untried side and a veteran side. And as you fight battles, some of your units get promoted to veterans and become better. Obviously, you want to take your losses on your untried units, and you pretty much have that option. Let's see what else we have. If you don't want to spend all your resource points, you can bank them. But remember, you can only play 1 banked resource point in addition to your operations points for the turn, whatever that works out as. Finally, we go to the interphase in between each turn, or not turn, each year, because turns are actually the play of 1 card. I will get confused on that regularly. What happens there? Well, I don't know. I know the ARVN stability happens there, but there's a few other things. Scoring. Check for faction collapse in Laos or Cambodia. I haven't gone into these. There's 2 factions in Laos, and there will be in Cambodia as well as a civil war breaks out there. One is the, I don't know what to call it, the free world supporting one or whatever, and one is a more communist faction. And they're fighting for control. If one is completely eliminated, the player who supports them has to pay resource points equal, I think it's 3, to support the regime. And if they do that, new untried units come into play, and things go on. If they refuse to do that, whichever their faction is collapses, and the side becomes pretty much permanently friendly to their side. Now, this is mainly important because of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is kind of hard to see, but there's this dashed line here, which is basically provinces that the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong can enter. And the U.S. can't enter them until they try to expand the war into Laos or Cambodia. I'm assuming that there's cards that allow that. Oh, here's something else cute about the cards. Now, I have no idea what these are. Each player has their own deck of cards, okay? And they're colored. Red for the communists, blue for the evil guys. No, and then there's a black deck of cards, and that deck is split and shuffled into each player's. Each player gets half the cards from that deck, just shuffled in. I don't know if they have to do mainly with political events down in Vietnam. In Vietnam, if they affect the VC specifically, because the VC have black counters. I don't know what they're about. I'm hoping to see how interesting they are. Oh, here's another one. When you draw your cards, you're allowed to grab up to 4 cards before you make your decision on whether or not to pick a campaign. So you can see how good your hand is before you decide to commit to using one of your limited number of campaigns. The Allied player only has 4. The NVA player has 6 campaigns throughout the game. You don't want to play a campaign unless you can score off of it, basically. Okay, what else happens in the interface? So, there's the body bag. And body count determines how many dove or unfortunately the rules are not well enough organized to find things easily, but body bag determines how much the hawk dove counter moves. It's probably this I really dislike. There's important rules, like where you place reinforcements, etc. They're only, and how you win the game, that are only in the scenario book. And you're referred to it without telling you where to look in the scenario book. The campaigns are only handled in the scenario book. It's as if they made a decision on how big each was going to be, and then wrote the rules and said, oh, we don't have room in this. Let's take out, and I don't know what. Okay. I don't have time to say that. Okay. So, anyway, the body count affects the hawk dove side, as does any Arvin coups. You can spend resource points to prop up Arvin if they're on the coup side, and to prevent a coup. Every year, except for when it's left at red and returned to the 0 space, it's at blue on the 0 space. I don't know what it matters, it's red or blue. Again, maybe I can find it in the rules if I try hard enough, but I haven't seen it so far. Okay. A couple of little things I haven't explained yet. These black units, these are the VC. They're able to ambush, which is kind of cool. They do that on this ambush raid table. They're also able to raid, and they can do damage to real units. And I also have left out bombers, which can do damage to real units. So anyway, the VC are able to ambush you and maybe kill something on the way. Their counters have there's 3 different kinds of counters. There's real ones, plus ones, which get a +1 on the die roll on the ambush raid table. And finally, nasty, frightening rumors. Bad intel counters. Bad intel counters, when they're revealed, make you roll an event. Now, a third of the time, nothing happens, but the rest of the time there's a lot of different little things that are keyed out here that have to do, you know, possible political effect, from what I understand from the rule book, and I haven't read these completely and I don't really wish to, they kind of must favor the US player, because it says that it's to the VC's detriment to expose these. I'm not sure I believe it when I look at them. They look balanced at best, in which case it may just be it's to the VC's detriment to lose a hidden counter that way. If a VC evades, rather than running to a safe area, they run back to the pool of VC counters. Wow, that doesn't sound very good. And there's a space on the board for them if you don't have a cool cup to draw from. Actually, it is. They run back there, you draw another one, and replace it either in a red-controlled area or along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Alright, I'm looking forward to this. I know I've spent a long time talking about it. I don't have a real good grip on the game yet in terms of what I want to do. I'm going to kind of wing it. There's no question there. But it looks like a very interesting, lighter coverage of Vietnam than I'm used to. Certainly much lighter than Victory Games is. I didn't get a chance to buy, or I got a chance to buy Year of the Rat a long time ago, but it looked, that production quality looked so questionable on it. And I've seen an interesting little solitaire game on it that Marco did a review on, and I know that States of Siege is going to come out with a Vietnam. They have several in the pipeline, they just don't know which one they're going to do. Okay, onward.